Well, on Thursday, an Albertina Sisulu Women's Month dialogue will be held in celebration of women's contribution to the struggle against apartheid. Mama Sisulu was one of the thousands who marched to the union buildings to protest against past laws. Our Tambo Foundation project manager Natasha Ali joins us in the studio for more on this. Natasha, great pleasure having you here in studio with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to start by asking, how important and relevant is it really to still celebrate Women's Month?
I will say that I think every day, every month should be Women's Month. We have a very gender unequal country, and I think having only 1 month dedicated to the equality of women or fighting against gender-based violence and other things like that is not sufficient. But I think it is important that we do acknowledge public holidays for what they are and the reasoning behind them, not just that we don't have to go to work on that day, but why was this day so specific? Why was it dedicated to honoring the legacies of these women? So yeah, the 9th of August I think is very important. It's a really, really essential day to highlight part of South Africa's history, and I think having Women's Month it's better than nothing, but it's definitely not good enough.
Well, are we celebrating, you say it's not good enough, but do you feel that we're celebrating stalwarts like Albertina Sisulu enough? And, I'd like to get a little bit nasty about it and say, you look at how some men who might have in fact contributed even less than she did to the liberation struggle, who are perhaps even more celebrated and more revered. Do you feel that there is enough contribution that goes to the women of the struggle? Only recently when Mamuni Mandela passed did we start to talk about her immense contribution.
Absolutely.
And in fact,
and wake
before
up,
she was villainized. Why do you think that the voices of these women are not as, are not as spoken about or advertised more as they should be? We see the statues of these men, these great men, and of course we're not fighting that.
No, not at all.
But do you feel that there is a problem in terms of us, celebrating women like Albertina Sisulu?
I do. I think it's just another way, even, posthumously, where women's contributions aren't validated because. And it's not because women went on the front lines of apartheid. It's not because they weren't MK soldiers. It's not even because they weren't literally laying their bodies on the line for the fight for equality for all South Africans. And I think it's just, it further goes to the point that Women's Month is not enough because we can't even celebrate the legacy of an incredible icon like Albertina Sisulu sufficiently enough, I feel, for what she did for this country, even in her 100th year, in her centenary. And I think it just further perpetuates, the stereotypes that women are still unequal. We're still, not valid members of society.
Now, this year we commemorate the 100 years since the birth of Albertina Sisulu, and part of those celebrations include the dialogues that we're speaking about today. Tell us more about that, please.
So on the 16th of August, next Thursday, we'll be hosting a dialogue. So the Tambo Foundation, which is the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation, let's not forget Adelaide, we'll be hosting this dialogue at UJ in conjunction with UJ. They're one of our partners, and also the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. And what we want is basically, we know what women's issues are. We know in South Africa, globally, whatever, we know what women's issues are. But what we want to do to honor Masisulu is pay homage to the women who marched on the 9th of August, 1956. But by channeling and harnessing that energy, that organizational capacity it took to get 20,000 women from all over the country to march to the union buildings, when they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have social media, they didn't even have landlines, and yet 20,000 women mobilized to get behind a cause they all felt so strongly about. So we want to take that under the theme of when women organize, what can be achieved? So what are we going to do? We saw last week with the total shutdown march, what can be achieved? So how do we take that energy? How do we pay tribute to these incredible women by doing the same with the advantages we have now, you know, the fourth industrial revolution, etc., and provide solutions, you know, solutions by women for women.
How effective are these marches? And I'm glad that the topic is when women organize. I mean, you just touched on briefly those marches that we saw against gender violence last week. The fact that we're still marching, we had these women marching in 1957, marching against unequal treatment and racism. Is this type of activism really sort of effective in that we are still facing some of the same problems?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It is, because the alternative is to do nothing.
Yeah.
And I think if it just gets people talking, that's enough, you know? What happened last week, when was it, Tuesday?
Right.
With the women waiting at the union buildings until the president arrives. I think things like that are so important, because you have to march to affect policy changes. And if that means, you know, being 1,000 strong, waiting for the president and being like, we go nowhere until you hear us, then I'm definitely behind marches.
All right. Natasha, great pleasure having you
Thank
with us.
you.
Unfortunately, run out of time. And we look forward to hearing more from...
And I hope to see you next Thursday.
I definitely will be there. Thank you so very
Thank you.
much. All right. That's Natasha Ali, or Tambo Foundation Projects Manager.